Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 16 of Ask Julie Anything. Tonight we've got Holistic Veterinarian Dr. Katie Kangas joining us all the way from San Diego, California. Let us know in the comments if you can hear us, please. That'd be great. Hi, everyone.
It's always fun to see where everybody's from.
Yeah, I like that too. Let us know in the comments where you're from. There's a chat button here. If you click that, we'll be able to chat with you. Sound is good, Lily, thanks. So tonight we are going to be trying to keep the conversation revolving around something called glyphosates. Many of you probably know about them and many of you don't. I know a little bit, but I'm sure Dr. Katie Kangas can get us all studied up tonight. We'll be taking questions if you can. I tried to collect a few before, and we'll get to those first. Just use the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen if you'd like to submit a question, and we'll be sure to get to them if we can. The session's going to run for an hour. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Katie, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you guys.
Well,
Julie,
it's great to have you.
Julie, how are you today?
I'm good.
Awesome.
I'm good.
All right, so let's start out. Dr. Katie, tell us a little bit about your practice. It's San Diego, and it's called I'm sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. Integrative Veterinary.
You can make me say it, so.
Yeah.
It is. It's integrative veterinary care. I do focus mostly on holistic and natural healing, but I'm very realistic with bringing in the benefits of Western medicine, or at least working in conjunction with my patients that are, using obviously some, medical aspects from that realm. But I do focus a lot on natural healing, and I don't actually in my practice anymore do some of the general things like surgery and imaging and things like that. So I really get to focus more on a lot of the wonderful natural healing modalities, and I spend a lot of time talking about nutrition and food therapy, because of course the number one health strategies for your pet or yourself is to eat a fresh food diet, and so I talk a lot about that. But I'm also Chinese medicine trained, so I do acupuncture and herbal medicine. I do some homeopathy as well, and then we have a lot of other hands-on therapies in my practice besides acupuncture. We have a chiropractor that works with us that's fantastic. We also offer ozone therapy and microbiome restoration therapy we've been doing as well, laser therapy and all those kinds of modalities too. So massage therapy, we do quite a bit of things, so it's wonderful.
Awesome.
It makes me miss my practice.
It's excellent. I mean, I love going to work. I just, the reward that I get in helping animals and their people achieve a higher well-being. And that's what I'm glad that you zoned in on that, because that's something that there's a lot of veterinarians that are big animal people, but not maybe as much people. And I just get very excited about helping everyone in the whole family unit, animal and person, to achieve a higher well-being and a higher health. And the great thing is anytime our animals get healthier, of course, they're happier, we're happier, everybody benefits.
Totally. Yeah.
But the wonderful thing is, so often, because of so much of what I do is educating people on how to support their pets to the best health, they get educated for themselves at the same time. And I have so many people come back to me and say, I'm healthier, my pet's doing great, look, but I'm also healthier because of the connection that we have and what I've learned through you and for my pet, and then applying it to myself and so forth. So it's just such a wonderful reward. And so I do really like going to my practice every day and feeling the connection and the difference that I get to make with everybody. So thank you.
That's awesome. And it's true. When I started, it was a long time ago, and it was sort of just a natural progression. Like it wasn't intentional, right? Like it wasn't an intentional thing to help the pet parents at all. And it just, so anyways, I would always say that I really believe that our animals are our guides, and they pull us to where we need to go. often if we listen to them, if we aren't kicking and screaming. But if we listen to them, they're often taking us where we need to go.
So true, Julie. And such a beautiful thought to add here, because so often I think when pets arrive at my doorstep, and of course their pet parents are, so wonderful and dedicated in wanting to find good resources to help their pet. But oftentimes what's going on with the pet may also be, that's a whole nother topic we could talk about, may also be going on for them in their lives with their health or their emotional or, all the gamut. And oftentimes when I am educating people on what we can do better for their pet, then they often share, that's what's going on with me. And so now I get to, and so by you saying animals are our guides, I 100% also believe that. And of course, one of my pets is who brought me to my holistic path and natural healing. And so she left me, her name was Asti, a black lab mix that I had. And in 2005, I was seeking resources beyond conventional medicine because of the limitations that I was having in helping my own dog with the resources that I had available. And so she is the inspiration for me to push beyond what I knew and go looking for more. And what a beautiful, so she was, and I have so many, of course, animal guides, but it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to recognize that. So
I think a lot of us that are doing this have had personal experiences with their own animals, and it's why it sort of has pushed us to looking at alternatives, right? Because you're doing everything you possibly can. It's the same with me. My dog was diagnosed with a tumor oh my gosh, in 1990, and it doesn't matter, everybody knows my story. Completely changed my whole way of looking at things because I wasn't okay with what they wanted to do. And it's so funny because I was raised holistically, completely jumped fence and went into conventional because I knew everything as a young woman, and then went back the other way, and sort of exactly like you. I still love diagnostics. I still see how needed it is, but it sounds like with you, you're primary holistic with an adjunct conventional more, rather than a primary conventional with adjunct holistic.
Right. Yep. That's perfectly said. So
all right, so want to get going?
Absolutely.
I'm ready to learn. Dr. Kangas, can we start with the basics? What is glyphosate? And then maybe we can run into things like how it affects our food, ourselves, and our animals. But just to start from the basics, what is it?
Yeah, so, and actually, if you don't mind, I might backtrack even a bit before I answer the question, because I think it's really nice to sort of give this foundational perspective to people. Absolutely. Is that as I evolved into my holistic, practice and interests, I've really started to focus more on something that we call functional medicine. And functional medicine really, it's really looked at in the human realm of natural health, but gaining more popularity in veterinary health too. And functional medicine really relies on two main principles. And the first one is finding the tools or supplying the body with the tools that it really needs to function at optimum. And of course, one of the, the number one thing is going to be nutrition and food and strategic supplements and things like that. But a lot of natural tools that you can provide the body or the animal's body in order to function at its best and its highest well-being. The second principle of functional medicine that's really important, though, is also how do we avoid or minimize the things in our environment that are coming into our bodies and affecting our bodies that are causing a lot of disease. So we want to give good tools, but we also want to avoid offenders that are causing inflammation, chronic inflammation, degeneration of the cells. And that's a big, as I evolved more into my holistic practice and a lot of the knowledge that, you know, like Julie and I would just keep expanding with, enjoying learning more and more, you know, topics and areas. And as I delved more into toxins, it becomes so evident that there's such a huge toxic burden in our day and age now on not only people, but tremendously on animals. And you'll see as we unfold through our discussion today that pets and horses even and animals can be far more exposed to extreme levels of glyphosate even compared to us. So there's a lot of toxins that are affecting our pets and ourselves, but just know that, you know, that is one of my, has become one of my focuses and one of my passions. And I'm actually speaking this year for the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, the HVMA, and I have 3 lectures, and actually 2 of them are on glyphosate, and 1 is on a detoxification method with Zeolite. So that is a good preface to get to your question, Stephanie, and what is glyphosate? Glyphosate is the ingredient, the main ingredient in Roundup, in Monsanto's Roundup. It's now off patent, so it's in lots and lots of different, you know, weed killers and herbicides. But glyphosate is the main ingredient and has been extensively studied for its toxicity in, you know, the environment and now in the body. And it is unfortunately used so ubiquitously throughout this country and throughout a lot of the world that it is estimated that glyphosate is in 70% of the global rainfall. I mean, it is everywhere. And it is creating a lot of different issues. So a lot of people have heard that glyphosate is carcinogenic. You know, it's been in the news for being linked to cancer and lawsuits against Monsanto and all these things. So, and we can go through some specific studies even on glyphosate being carcinogenic and being linked to lots of cancers in dogs. But beyond that, glyphosate is also, it's an antibiotic, and it's now the most widely used antibiotic in the world. And it turns out that glyphosate is actually an antibiotic in the soil because it is interfering with microbe pathways in the soil. And it's actually an herbicide in the plant. It's blocking amino acids and alkaloids, nitrogen compounds in the plant. So plant proteins, it's blocking them. And the significance of that for all of us is that these alkaloids have a wide array of medicinal properties, you know, anti-inflammatory, neuromodulatory, you know, pain relieving. I mean, when we turn to plants for medicine, and that's what I always say is, you know, of course, anybody who's into natural healing and health is going to have the viewpoint that our medicine, our food should be our greatest medicine. As if it wasn't bad enough that glyphosate is cancer causing and, you know, adding to antibiotic, you know, issues with microbial resistance and all these things.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's also blocking the ability of our food to be our medicine because it is blocking these alkaloids. And so that to me is really, I mean, it's all very disturbing, but that part, you know, it's becoming hard for people's food to actually be the same nutrition and the same value that it used to be. So there's a lot of scopes happening here, but that's a little intro to what is glyphosate. It's used everywhere. I can say, you know, it's used on a ton of crops. Actually, this is a good thing I can explain for everybody, is most people have heard the term GMO, genetically modified organism. And I think it was the 1970s when they started doing these things where they were genetically modifying. The first 2 biggies crops were corn and soy. And they were doing this so they could spray glyphosate on it and it wouldn't kill the plant and the plant would survive. And of course, you know, GMO stuff has been studied and linked to a lot of problems. But the thing is now there are tons of there's a lot of GMO crops, but there are a lot of non-GMO crops that are still being sprayed with glyphosate. And the interesting thing is corn and soy and other GMO crops are sprayed at the beginning of harvest because the plant is protected at being GMO from, you know, the Roundup. But non-GMO crops, such as biggies, are lentils, peas, oats, and wheat, among some others. they are actually typically sprayed at the end of harvest to dry them quickly, ripen them quickly, so they, you know, have this. So the issue, or a big issue, is the fact that these types of foods are actually higher in glyphosate and more toxic levels of glyphosate than even the corn and soy. So a lot of people know to avoid those because they're GMO, but what a lot of people may not know, and this applies very significantly to dogs and pets, cats too, because of what's in, you know, what ingredients are in pet foods, but there is a higher glyphosate percentage in these plants that are oats, lentils, peas, wheat, and things like that. And there, of course, are a lot of pet foods that have very high volumes, especially, you know, getting into the whole grain-free discussion. I believe, with my knowledge on glyphosates, that one of the big issues with some of the allegations against grain-free foods is that there are very high levels of non-organic, okay, so not clean, full of glyphosate, of lentils and these things, potatoes and these other things that are now, they're so laden with glyphosate, they're causing destruction to the gut and altering the microbiome, which therefore alters the absorption of taurine and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I guess
in the grain-free.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. So these grain-free foods, and so I like to educate people that it's not, you know, I don't believe that dogs, you know, now all of a sudden conventional veterinarians think that dogs have a biological need for grain, you know, for the heart. And so I like to clear that up for people. It's just that, unfortunately, a lot of these grain-free foods use high volumes of heavily processed non-organic legumes and potatoes and oats and things like that. And so now we understand that they have a very high glyphosate percentage, and that can be affecting the gut and affecting, you know, the microbiome and how amino acids are absorbed and things like that. So I believe with what I know that there's very, you know, likely a link with that in the whole taurine issue. But I'm glad I sort of went to that, because I did want to get this piece in. What I didn't mention when I was talking about all the issues with glyphosate, which is a huge one, is that glyphosate is one of the biggest offenders of leaky gut. And so it is indeed causing inflammation on the inner lining of the gut. And most people probably know, if they've been following Julie for any amount of time at all, what leaky gut is. But we now believe, even in, you know, of course, holistic practitioners, we've always gone by the saying, all disease starts in the gut. But now conventional Western medicine fully recognizes by identifying leaky gut syndrome, and it is thought to be the foundational reason for just about anything chronic you can name, and certainly allergies and autoimmune and all kinds of, you know, chronic diseases. And we now understand that glyphosate is a huge offender in causing leaky gut. And there's also been a very interesting relationship found between gluten and glyphosate. And so we now understand that there's a toxic synergy when you're eating a food that has gluten in it and you're also consuming glyphosate at the same time. They have an exponential toxic synergy together in your gut. So either one of them by themselves is not nearly as bad, but you put them together and you get massive leaky gut. And I also believe that that is one of the reasons why there are so many dogs and animals and humans that have issues with gluten and that are gluten intolerant or gluten reactive. And people could eat bread and they could eat, you know, these things, or they can go to Europe and eat them, or they're not spraying with glyphosate. But, you know, prior to the 1990s, when glyphosate became, or Roundup became such a widely used thing, gluten intolerance
wasn't a big deal.
Was not a big deal. So it's, you know, it's the accumulation or the, you know, the combination of a lot of things that are happening in our environment that's adding to such a big problem together.
And I read, on top of that, even I read, and that thing I was saying that I was doing, that when something's been sprayed with it and then it's milled, the milling process, the vibration process, actually increases it by like 8 times the amount.
Wow. And I was aware of that piece, and that is really remarkable, because a lot of the foods, of course,
have it milled. I know. And maybe that's why sometimes like the sprouted grains might even might be better because it
Right.
removes a big part of what the gut's sensitive to. But also, as soon as I read that, I was like, well, I wonder if that's why some people can eat sprouted grains when they're intolerant, or sprouted wheat even, compared to the milled one.
Right.
Creepy.
And the thing is, and this may be just throwing a thought out there, is that a lot of food products that are sprouted may also, if people are taking the effort to create and sell something that's sprouted, it may also be organic.
Yeah,
And
most of the time.
And so then glyphosate becomes much less of an issue. And what I learned a lot from, I had a lot of discussions with Larry Boland, who is a wonderful person and scientist, who is the founder of the HRI Labs, the Health Research Institute. And they have been so strategically helpful in studying so much of this, glyphosate toxicity levels in the foods. And so I, learned a lot about the, toxic levels in foods. And he clarified for me, and then I was able to teach this, that they've studied organic foods that are, when they're not organic, are known to be very high in glyphosate. And so through all their studies, they have shown that 95% of the time, if it's labeled organic, at least as far as glyphosate is concerned, they're not checking for all these other toxins, but 95% of the time, there is not a trace of glyphosate, nothing. 5% of the time, they do find some traces of glyphosate. So whether that's from commingling, transport, mislabeling, but it's nice to know that 95% of the time, when you're spending extra money to buy clean food, as far as glyphosate is concerned, it's clean. So that's wonderful. Yeah. So if it's sprouted, that may much more likely be an organic food as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
So creepy.
It is creepy.
It is. It's really I think what the most disturbing part of it all is that we know so much and it's continued to be used. Like when people didn't know what asbestos was, or when people didn't know, like the ignorance, and then all of a sudden, holy man, this is like not good.
Right.
And then asbestos gets, you're not allowed to use it, and you have to blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Well, we know all of this, but we're still using it. It's like, what?
Yeah. It's as soon as we had the awareness, yes, you would expect better change, but unfortunately, with it being a multi-billion-dollar industry, it gets so wrapped up into politics and finances and all these things, and that's a shame. And
it is.
The other thing, which is a really good piece of people understanding why this has gotten to where it has. But one other thing that I thought would be nice to include for everyone here is Dr. Larry Boland and his lab have done a lot of studies on foods that humans eat, foods that animals eat. They've studied glyphosate levels in the urine of humans and dogs and horses and cats and everything. And we now understand that the average dog food kibble is one of the highest glyphosate foods that they've ever measured. I mean, it has more glyphosate than any other foods that they've measured. So, and human urine, in the last 20 years, we have, the average American human has 38 times the amount of glyphosate in their urine than they did 20 years ago. The average American dog has 32 times more glyphosate in their urine than we do. So you can just get an idea of their very high level of exposure. And they actually did studies on, all these different types of foods and kibbles and processed pet foods. And then they also looked at fresh raw diets that are mainly meat-based. And they found, which is really remarkable, that the average kibble dog food diet has 400 parts per billion of glyphosate. The average raw meat meal for dogs has 1 part per billion.
Wow.
So 400 times more. So it is really remarkable. And so one of the things that he shared with me that I like to share is literally one handful of dog treat biscuits that I have like oats and whatever. If you're feeding raw food every day, but you give a handful of treats that have glyphosate in them, you can literally surpass in one handful, you can surpass like 400 meals of what they would normally be eating as far as glyphosate levels. I mean, that is really remarkable.
So I have a question before anybody else does. When they measure that, was the meat organic, or is that just regular? Is that
you know
just
what?
meat?
I think it's just right, because I asked that too. And that is really interesting. I'm like, well, what about these cows and
That are eating that?
I
Yeah.
think like, yes. So I actually brought that up. What about all these food animals that are eating GMO and, you know, glyphosate sprayed foods? And he said that it actually excretes through feces and urine. They do find a little bit in hair, but most of it excretes through the body within 7 days. And it doesn't, I don't think it really stays around in the meat. Okay?
I wonder if it stays in eggs and milk.
Yeah, that's a great question, because we didn't specifically touch on that. And I'm not sure if his lab's been doing so much, even since he and I started conversations, that he may have well studied those foods by now. But I don't recall us talking about them at that point. So,
Because I have all my guys on raw milk, right? But I don't have my own cow, and
Right.
I know that the cow, where I get it, the cow's treated really, really well, but I know it's not eating organic food. It's mostly on grass, but in the wintertime, it's on hay and grain.
And it's hard,
right?
organic hay. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
it's impossible.
Right. So yeah, so that's a good point too. But I would think,
No wonder.
just based on the information that I know with the meat-based diets, that it's very likely to be a lot cleaner than, you know, other foods would be. So
Yeah. So interesting.
It's interesting, but it's also terrifying, you know?
I know.
that's what I always tell people. I mean, we can get to the solution-oriented stuff too, but you know, the awareness and learning about it can be very scary, but that's the step one. And then we have to, instead of focusing on the, you know, scariness of it and the gloom and doom, focus more, as much as we can, on what can we do about it. And the more people we educate, and the more people that realize how they can and should, if at all possible, to, you know, as much as their budget can do, feed themselves and their pets, you know, with this knowledge, then everybody's better off for it. And
Totally.
the more people that learn about Roundup and similar weed killers, because it's sold in Home Depot and Lowe's,
I know.
Target, and you know, it's like it's everywhere. And that's the other thing too, is it's not just crops. It started out for crops, and then everyone went gonzo with, okay, let's spray it on lawns and trees and blah blah blah, and so it's in parks. And we know, you know, dogs have, this is why they have 32 times more. Their food is laden with it, but
they're walking in it.
They're walking in it. They don't wear shoes like people. They're rolling in the grass. They're little hoovers sniffing up in it gets nasal absorption. They've shown this. They've shown that topical absorption of glyphosate actually occurs because Monsanto actually did studies. This was their published studies where they were measuring glyphosate from farmers, urine of farmers who wore gloves and who didn't wear gloves when they were handling the weed killers, the glyphosate products. And farmers that didn't wear gloves had 10 times more glyphosate than farmers that did. So in their body. So definitely they concluded that there is topical absorption across the skin. We know that's occurring for dogs. We know it can be breathed in. So there's a big issue with it, you know, being sprayed around. And so it's really nice for people to gain that awareness. And since I did bring that up, I'll just expand a little bit, that there were definitely studies that have been done. And I think it was National Cancer Institute actually published a study that said that the risk of lymphoma for dogs, which is one of the most common types of cancers we see in dogs, was twice as high if the property that they lived on or near was sprayed with glyphosate more than a few times a year. It was 4 times a year, or at least. And then Tufts University, or vet school, did a study, and they found that the risk of malignant lymphoma in dogs went up by 70% if they had exposure to these chemicals. So it's definitely being studied and looked at. So it's nice for people to understand, if they have this awareness, they can educate themselves and neighbors and family on the use of these kinds of lawn things in their own
Mm-hmm.
communities and in their own yards and homes and things like that. So
Yeah.
Awesome. I was gonna say, oh sorry, Julie, go ahead.
Oh, no, go.
I was gonna say, well, earlier before you tied a neat little bow on it, then why the heck are we still using it? But you went over that, Dr. K, and it's quite obvious why we're still doing it, unfortunately. So I've got quite a few questions coming in. Donna said that, she said so much for organic, it's in the rainwater. Have you come across any studies that say that maybe this stuff is getting into our water?
well, it's definitely, it's been reported to be in 70% of the global rainfall. So it's made its way around the globe, you know, going up and condensing and coming back down. So indeed, Donna, you're right. I mean, it is scary because it is everywhere, but still, it's still worthy. From everything that I've learned, it's absolutely worthy of spending extra money on eating organic for yourself and for your pet as much as you can. And a lot of the health and wellness experts that have studied a lot about this are also big on, you know, try and grow your own food, you know, get into the community with buying from farmers markets and co-ops and, you know, things that are grown locally and, you know, clean and simply. And yes, you can't avoid glyphosate 100%. It's in, you know, the rainfall and in a lot of other things, but still the measures that you can take are absolutely going to make a difference. So don't feel so, you know, overwhelmed that you can't make any difference, because you can. But obviously the more that we know and the more that people hopefully can have their voice heard, that this will start to change at some point in the environment too. So
Awesome. Thank you. I've got another one from April here. I'm not sure if you can speak to this or not. Is it illegal for gardening companies to use it in an apartment complex? I just found out they're using it here where I live.
Yeah, I don't think it's illegal at all, unfortunately.
No, I don't either.
And maybe there's a few districts that have some unique, awesome, you know, laws of their own, but I have no awareness of any place that it's actually, unfortunately, at least in this country, that it's illegal to use. So, but there are a lot of like housing, you know, HOAs and different, you know, housing communities that have petitioned their, you know, areas or whatever to not use it on their grounds. And I think that has been passed, and, you know, a lot of that's been approved, and they find other solutions and things like that. So it's nice to be aware of what's happening and be as active in, you know, the decision making as you can.
Especially if it's like condo complexes and things like that, where they have what's that called, like a strata, or you know, where they have strata meetings and stuff. You can bring it to their attention. Yeah, my brother did that in Vancouver with his complex, and just brought all kinds of research and information and stuff, and said, like, you know, we have a choice whether or not we want to use this or not, and we shouldn't be using it. And there's a lot of people that were against it, so they got it passed.
So it's nice to get the community educated and get everyone making a difference together.
Yeah,
that's the hardest part, is the education, right? You don't know what you don't know.
Right. I mean, people see, I mean, the average person that's not plugging into health stuff like we do may not know, and they see it in Home Depot, and, you know, they buy it and go, my plants are going to be pretty and I won't have weeds in my yard, and they don't even think about it. But luckily, you know, there is more and more awareness getting out there, and we get to be a piece of that. So that's nice.
That's the best part. Okie dokie. Lynn is asking, if glyphosate is eliminated from the cows, goats, etc. in 7 days, is that the same amount of time for elimination from cats and dogs that eat food that contains it?
You know, I believe it is. I can't say 100%, but I'm pretty sure that is the same. You know, that would be the same. The problem is with them is that they're usually continually ingesting it. So, but yes, if you get them on a different diet and a clean food, then certainly their urine should become cleaner. And then you know that they have less glyphosate in their bodies, which is awesome. And for anyone who's interested, the Health Research Institute, which I believe is hri.org, if you want to visit their website, they do glyphosate, urine testing for glyphosate on whoever you want to submit urine for. You can submit it for yourself, which I, highly recommend, your dog, your horse, whatever. So.
Dr.
And-
King, sorry,
Go ahead.
Dr. Kangas, that's Larry's website, right? HRIlabs.org. I just put it in the chat there for everyone if you want to check it out.
Yep, great.
And that would be interesting when you just said that, because I wonder if that is why. Remember, Stephanie, when you were saying about the woman the girl that wrote in about her own personal experience?
Yeah, I'd like to share that story.
Yeah, do it, and then I'm gonna say what I was gonna say.
Okay, so it's Louise. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Poppy Phillips. That's the story I want to share. She said, it's so frustrating. My girlfriend's daughter was diagnosed with 3 types of leukemia at age 13 years old. They lived in the middle of commercial crops. I told them to move ASAP. After treatment, they moved to Sonoma, California, where Roundup is banned. She's been in remission for a few years now and just had her 17th birthday.
So I was wondering when you said that, like, just even if it does come through your urine, like when it's heavy, you have it in, like when you're really toxic with it, and it creates all of this chronic diseases and cancer and whatever. Just the fact that she wasn't around it, exposed to it as much, her body was, I guess, is possibly detoxifying from it, right? Like,
Which
has
is
the ability.
which is so encouraging. And of course, as holistic practitioners, we know of a lot of tools that we can use to help detoxify the body. But if she didn't, she wasn't aware of those and wasn't even using them, I mean, what a wonderful testament to the fact that the body is such a true healer of itself, that she got such good results.
Like getting away from it.
Removing herself from that type of saturation is amazing.
Oh my God.
There's 3 questions here. Rebecca and Donna are asking the same type of thing. Is there a way to get it out of our bodies as a detox? And Donna says the same thing. How can we detox our pets safely from glyphosate?
Well, interesting that you asked. That is one of the things that I am, presenting at the HVMA, and I'll tell you 2 of my favorite products, but then I can also expand, and maybe I'll do the broad scope first, in that anything that you can do to help repair leaky gut on an ongoing basis, and Adored Beast, of course, has products for that. There's a lot of wonderful things that you can do, even things like colostrum and all kinds of things that can help to repair leaky gut. Anytime you do that, you're already helping the body, and that is what some of the damage of the glyphosate is causing. But of course, glyphosate is a toxin, beyond that. So 2 of the things that I have found to be wonderful solutions or options to address the glyphosate and other toxic issues is one I'm lecturing on at the HVMA, and that is in the category of mineral substances called zeolites. And there is a particular zeolite called clinoptilite, but they all have, these same properties. And on a molecular, they're mineral, and they're basically from like volcanic ash layer of the earth. So kind of like a clay ash, but they're a unique mineral substance, and they're very microscopically or molecularly porous. And so they bind stuff up and carry it out of your body. And so this clinoptilite looks like a clay. It comes in a powdered form generally. It's sold for people and for animals. Glacier Peak Holistics has a version, which I love to use in my practice. And they actually combined it with kelp and call it Super Cleanse, or they have it by itself. So I use both of those products. But clinoptilite has been extensively studied. Actually, it's used in pets, farm animals, humans, and it removes a lot of different toxins from the body, but has been shown to help repair the damages of glyphosate and remove glyphosate as well. But indeed, clinoptilite has been shown to remove arsenic, mercury, lead. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal. They're actually using it in the agricultural industry with pig, chicken farms, cattle farms, and they're even detoxifying water, because a lot of these farms, a lot of people may know that unfortunately some of these mass farms produce some of the worst pollution, especially, pig farms are really well known for it, that there is just cesspools of polluted water and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, they're using clinoptilate literally to remove ammonia and all kinds of toxic things from water to make it safe to drink again for these farm animals and things. So it's really interesting. Clinoptilate can be used for water, purification or removing things, and it can also be used in your body. It's taken orally. You can just put it in your pet's food, or I actually put it in yogurt. If you try and mix it in with water, it's like a sediment. It's like sand's going to sink to the bottom. It's on the bottom of your glass. So I mix it in yogurt. There's really no flavor. You really don't taste it, and your pets won't mind it either. And it's once a day in the food, and it has numerous beneficial applications. So clinoptilate is one of my, and I could even show a visual if you want, because I have it nearby. But that's one of the things that I really like to use. And then one other product which is unique, and I will say the creator of this product, his name is Dr. Zach Bush, and he is a human doctor. If anybody is familiar with him, he's an MD, and he is actually triple board certified in endocrinology, internal medicine, and hospice care, alternative medicine. And Dr. Bush has done a lot of research in soil science and soil microbes and trying to find natural cures for cancer and all these things. Well, he ended up on this path of learning about glyphosate and leaky gut because of all of his studies, and came across a natural compound which he turned into a product that actually helps to heal leaky gut as well, and to mitigate the negative action of glyphosate in the gut. I don't believe that one is a detoxifier. So the neat thing is they're actually different. Clinoptilate is going to remove the toxins. The Dr. Bush product, which I didn't mention yet, it's called Ion Gut Health. Used to be called Restore for People and Lumapet for dogs and cats, and they changed the label name late last year. Now it's called Ion Biome or Ion Gut Health. And that literally they show on like electron microscope imaging, if you want to watch the videos and all that. But they literally, like leaky gut, literally just zips back together when you consume that. And it's looks like water, tastes like water, little bit. You put, person is a tablespoon a day, large dog is a couple teaspoons a day, small dog and cat 1 teaspoon a day, and it's like adding water to their food. They're not even going to know. That helps to repair leaky gut on a daily, ongoing basis from what's causing inflammation in the gut every day. So that's a nice one too. But any, and as I said before, any of the products that help to resolve and heal leaky gut are absolutely one of your barriers of defense for everything in your body, but definitely, glyphosate damage too. So there's a lot of wonderful products that can help with that.
It's important because I mean, that's the whole reason that I put fulvic and humic acid in Phytophthora, right? The canine strain that I have. And I think Restore is a fulvic acid is fulvic acid, right?
Yeah.
And what's so cool is that straight fulvic and humic acid, it does both. It chelates, so it pulls heavy metals, and then it helps to repair the permeability of the gut lining.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really cool, and they're ancient, and I think that's why it does it. I mean, they're from, like, the one that we use is from the Ice Age.
Wow.
Right? Like
fantastic.
And they're minerals. I mean, that's what they are. They're minerals that don't even exist now, that we don't even, some of the minerals we don't even know what they are because they're from vegetation that's just too old. We don't even have them anymore. Right.
Amazing how many healing things there are on this earth that if, just to scratching the surface of tapping into them. But, what a wonderful thing that the earth does have so many options to help us heal. Which product, Julie, did you say that one is in?
That's, well, if it's for you, it's in our PharmaFlora, which is our vet exclusive probiotic, right? But it's in Phytophthora, which is the one that people can, that everybody else can get.
Yep.
And that's the one that's got the canine strain in it, right? Like the canine strain probiotic. But it's almost like, I know this is really out there and wacky, but it's almost like the earth knew what we were going to need. You know, it's almost like with the ice age, like especially now when you're thinking of COVID and stuff, and you know, where we went through the destruction period and then came out of it. It's like, what came out of that? I don't know. I don't even get going. I'm not even going to start talking about it, but it's just like,
it's not wacky to me, but we could go.
Like it's
awesome rabbit hole
incredible. We just need to listen to the planet, like really listen to the planet and it's going to tell us what we need and what we should be doing, you know, to just keep moving forward and heal our bodies and heal our animals' bodies. And at the same time, it heals itself, right?
Right.
It's just incredible.
Yeah, it's so true. And the more we learn, the more opportunity that we can give our bodies and the planet to heal, because it has all those innate abilities. We have our pets, ourselves, our bodies have the innate intelligence and ability to heal, and the planet does too. So
it does.
To stop offending that, you know, pathways, the better we all are. So,
you know, what's kind of cool that you just said, because everybody wasn't sort of privy to this when we were talking about our animals are our guides to heal us, right? It's almost the same thing when we look at the earth. When we look at what we need to do to heal the earth, we're healing ourselves, right? Like, it's like we just really need to pay attention to what we're seeing, you know, not what we're hearing, but to actually what we're seeing. Yeah, it's okay. Keep asking.
Yeah, I want to read one more story. I've actually got two more. Louise Shane wrote in, and she asked, once it's sprayed, how long does it stay in the ground? We've been on our 97-acre farm for 17 years and know that at one time our fields were sprayed prior to being here. Does it ever go away? Also, one farm across the road from us has soy and is sprayed. How much of that is a danger to us and our animals?
You know, I wish I knew. I know there's a period of years that to be like a certified organic farm, that you have to test each year for like a number of years, and I don't know if that's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I think
it's 15 years.
Yeah, it's a while. So I think it can stay in the ground for quite some time, but I'm sorry, I don't know the exact mark on that. I'm sure Larry Bolin and of course Zach Bush would, but definitely it's a significant amount of time. So, and then if there's nearby, if she said there's soy nearby that's being sprayed, I mean, certainly there is some drift, and that was one of the things that they talked about with 95% of the time organic has no traces of glyphosate, but 5% of the time they believe a lot of that is from drift or from commingling and packaging, or maybe from mislabeling or fraud, but there's definitely a fair amount of drift happening. So there would likely be some.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Kangas. There's one more here from Snowy. She said her former vet used to collect the morning dew in the early spring from the farmer's field across her house, and she would make up her own homeopathic dilution for the animals to take. She's asking, unfortunately the vet passed away last year. What other remedies can our animals and ourselves take to counteract glyphosate?
For like homeopathic remedies?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Julie has more of a background in homeopathy than do I, but there's certainly some detox remedies. Homeopathy is not my strongest suit, but I certainly use it, and I love to utilize homeopathy, and it has many strengths and such safety and all that. I would say, any of the formulas that are good for drainage or lymphatics or anything like that would definitely apply, but I don't know if there's, anything, I'm not aware of anything that specifically has been looked at for that, but
Julie, can you add on?
Well, there's heavy metals, right? Like there's you would have to, if you're looking specifically for that, then you would look at a mineral, right? Like whether it's, you know, conium or whether it's arsenic or whatever, and see if the symptomatology would fit a similar symptomatology of what you're trying to detoxify from. But that's where I would look at it, like organotherapies and things like that, where you have a little lymph drainage. So working more on the body system to help support, rather than specifically a remedy to target the heavy metal or the poison or the toxin, is you support the physiology and the system of the body that has to stay really, really clean and really healthy in order for the body to naturally do that. So that would be what you were talking about, is like specific lymphatic drainage remedies, like combination remedies.
Can always be helpful. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Donna's got a question. If you use the Zeolite product in Super Cleanse, is there any chance of a detox reaction if a dog has a ton of glyphosate in their system and is already struggling with kidney damage?
So not that I'm aware of. I have not seen, or not that I'm aware of yet, and I've used this product quite a bit. I haven't seen anything that I have recognized as a detox, problem. And everything too, I did quite a bit of research in order to put my manuscripts together. It's used pretty extensively for farm animals and agricultural animals, and they've got to have pretty heavy loads. I'm not aware that anybody has a problem with it. So it's touted as being extremely safe. So I would think that the chances of having an issue with that are pretty slim. If they do have kidney, issues, if this pet or any individual has kidney problems, what a great thing to be doing and helping the body to detox. Mm-hmm. Obviously supporting the liver too. I mean, when we have a kidney problem, we know we want to support kidneys, but sometimes people don't think, well, then, and it also makes good sense to support liver, because, those are the two main detox organs. So we can, help in that regard. And then clinoptilite is so wonderful too. Some of the things that help heal leaky gut also can help heal the integrity of the kidney tubules. Because I know the Restore products, so the ingredients that Julie referred to, can also have properties in repairing the mucous membrane integrity in the kidney tubules. Yeah. So the neat thing to know is, if you're using these to help the gut and detox, you can also expect that her kidneys will benefit as well. Directly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is that when you get a detox from, like maybe changing food, or like, I understand what she's saying. Like sometimes, whatever, if you're looking at yeast or you're doing some kind of detox, they can get worse almost before they get better. I always try to avoid that at all costs. But I think with like the fulvic and humic acid and the Restore and the, what's it called? Zeolite?
Yep.
Zeolite.
Clinoptilite.
I think it works. What I know from it is it takes it and it takes it out of the body. Whereas the detox that she's talking about is often like a Herxmeyer reaction, or where it actually it overfloods the body, like it goes into the body. And I think the whole concept of this is the opposite, Donna. It actually pulls it out through urine, and I think it's a completely different.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because it's not having to drain through the lymphatics. It's actually being physically removed. So yeah, that would make sense. And because I haven't seen any problems with it, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie. Laura's curious, what brand name of clinoptilite does Dr. Kangas use?
So it's
you have it, don't you? Good.
Yeah, I can show a little visual, because I show visuals all the time with my clients, because I do a lot of Zoom sessions. So it's the Glacier Peak Holistics. This is their Super Cleanse, where they combine the kelp and the clinoptilite together, which is such a win-win, because I love kelp supplementation as well. And then the clinophthalate is spelled like that. So that might
Right.
really help people because it's kind of a mouthful to say, and it is in the zeolite group of minerals, but it is a very specific zeolite that a lot of people feel is more therapeutic than the average zeolite.
And the great thing about that is that, like, Deb is so, from Glacier Peaks, she's so on top of, like, you can really trust what she has, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. She's very passionate about quality and organic, and we just had a discussion about how, of course, we're talking about organic and being clean and why that's different. And she's like, any herb that's not organic, you know, can't heal the body with a stick herb, so you need a clean herb. So yeah, you know, the
Yes, she said, I just saw someone say, can we get Glacier Peaks in Canada? We can. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that, Julie and Dr. Kangas. Really quick before we wrap up here, can we go over again what we can do to avoid glyphosate?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, you know, some of the biggest things would be to, as much as you can, eat organic for yourself and get your pet, you know, the cleanest organic food. If they're eating a raw meat-based food, which is what my ideal is for most pets. I mean, there's no one right diet for every single pet, but I'm always recommending, my, you know, big mission for most pets, if possible, is to at least get them on a fresh food diet and a raw food diet if that works for them and the family and everything. But if they're on a raw food diet, right there, you're eliminating a ton of glyphosate exposure with all that we know from all the testing that's been done. So with those maneuvers already, you're really making a huge impact for your pet. And then obviously avoiding, you know, anything in your community or the use at least around your area to the best that you can to avoid these higher levels of glyphosate. Growing as much of your own food and getting your food, you know, locally and from small sources is wonderful. And then utilizing some of these products that we talked about for supporting the integrity of the gut and, you know, addressing leaky gut on a daily basis through great products and lifestyle is awesome. And then right down to detoxification with things like clinophthalate and, you know, other options. So I think that's like a nice sort of tier of tools that we can all look at.
Awesome. Thank you. And I guess awareness is key too. Staying educated, being aware, like some of the attendees said, or like your brother, even Julie, just know what's going on around you. Are they spraying the lawns with stuff that's toxic?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awareness is where it starts for sure. So that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you know, I also think that, like, when you were talking about eating local and farmers markets and things, the more what for the economy, even, like, when you think about it that way, what drives the economy is people asking for stuff, right? So even when you go, like, even when I go to farmers markets, I'll ask them, you know, just because it's at the farmers market doesn't mean hasn't been sprayed. Right. So I'll say, you know, has this been sprayed? Has this been, you know, and if it's been sprayed, then I go to a different vendor, right? A different booth. And eventually you just see more and more people with signs saying, you know, not non-sprayed and you know, you just have to be able to trust people, hopefully. But some people, where they can't, like, if you can't afford organic or you can't get organic, never mind afford it, try and get like, some farmers don't have their organic certificate, but they really do pride themselves. They're trying to get it, so they're not spraying, right? So they're still trying to get certified, but on their way to getting certified, it's still way better than regular.
Yep. Like at our market, a lot of people will show you, you know, totally pesticide free, but they're not. And then another, you know, vendor might say certified organic, and other people say, well, we're not certified yet, but we absolutely use no pesticides, you know, kind of thing. So, you know, at least you can sort of do your homework and choose the best that you can.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. And then, you know, the other thing, just to remind people, recap from what I said earlier, is the note about grain-free foods is that if they're heavily processed kibble, because processing is a whole piece of this too. And, you know, even Julie mentioned that with the milling, but then the cooking and, you know, the high heat and extreme, you know, processing and all that, that all makes a difference with what's going on, you know, metabolically with all of these things. But for anybody who is, you know, buying processed food, try to be choosy. But there are a lot of grain-free foods out there that, you know, their number one ingredient is, you know, peas and lentils and potatoes and things that are not species appropriate for a dog or a cat already. So that is a really good thing to, you know, be aware of for things that you can do and get it.
And if people that are watching like are going, oh my gosh, because I totally get grain-free food, but then I try to give them some, you know, like half and half or whatever. What if they are looking then to get where they look at their bag and it's like a really expensive bag, and the first thing, or not first thing, but the first other than meat is lentils or peas or legumes or whatever. Yep. If they're gonna go, okay, well that's, now I need to look at a different option. What kind of grain would you get them to look at? Like if they're absolutely having to.
Yeah, if there's an option, and I don't think that there's many out there, but if there's an option for a food that uses organic ingredients for that, then you sort of bypass, you know, the issue. Although, you know, a lot of grain-free foods, and not, you know, not everybody, but as a general rule, I think there's still a lot more carbohydrate in there than most people think, because you hear grain-free and you think it's more meat. And so, you know, the other thing is the label splitting that we now understand what's going on, where there could be pea starch, pea flour, pea protein, and they split it into 3 things so that the meat rises to the top of the label, and there can be 3 pea parts, you know, that sort of thing. So, you know, just, I would do your best to buy foods that have not a high volume of carbohydrate, because right there, whether it's glyphosate or not, you're already doing your pet a favor. And definitely if it's not organic, then you're getting less glyphosate too.
So if you're looking at a label and there's like one's grain free, and exactly like you said, like they're splitting the peas into 3 categories, so really it's like way up here, and then they're looking at another product that's got maybe oats in it but doesn't have any legumes, doesn't have any peas. Both of them are not organic. Right? Like, which do you still think?
Well,
that there's
unfortunately,
more in the
oats are high glyphosate too. So the things that the HRI lab found, in fact, Larry Bolin, when he talks, he says the OWL foods, OWL, so you can remember, it's oats, wheat, and legumes, but peas are too. Chickpeas, green peas, all of that. So unfortunately, they do have quite a bit of glyphosate. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm all for green foods either, and I certainly would not choose something with soy or corn in it either. So,
I know, it's so
but
hard,
and so I mean, people, I don't want to stress people out by, you know, because when you're buying kibble or, you know, heavily processed foods, it becomes more difficult to make a good choice. But you know, the cleanest and most animal-based protein diets that you can get, and obviously from my perspective, if you can do fresh food, that's always your optimum. And 100%. If you have to feed one processed meal a day and one fresh meal a day, at least that's way better. I always applaud people for whatever motion they can make in the positive direction, feel good about that, rather than, you know, feeling overwhelmed that you can't do it all. And so whatever you can do that is in you know, positive direction of feeding your pet better and yourself better, then applaud yourself for that, and just
for sure.
Yeah.
And little bits at a time, right?
It makes,
you know,
it does. I explain to people all the time. I educate them in the first session for their pet. We spend a full 60 minutes together. We're going through a lot of stuff, and I always, you know, put this perspective in there for everybody before we finish, is that we're not going to achieve this overnight. So I'm giving you a lot of information, and don't necessarily feel this sense of urgency that if you don't know exactly what you're going to do with a completely changed diet in the next day. It's a little evolution, and sometimes it's baby steps, and you're just getting better and better as you get more information and you know, explore a little bit more about what's going to work for you and for your pet. So
do you, oh, I'm so glad you said that. Do you do phone consults? Okay, can you please give Stephanie so that we can put it in the chat? Because we're always like, because people are always like, oh, but I don't have any holistic vets in my area. But, you know, nothing's stopping people to do telephone consults or Zoom meetings or Zoom.
Right. So
Zoom is really awesome too, so that you can actually see the animal.
Right.
So can you give Stephanie the information? And we'll put it in the chat.
I just put it in the chat right now. Dr. Kangas's website.
Okay.
vetcare.com. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. That was an excellent session. I'm gonna nickname this one the Power Hour. That was incredible.
Thank you.
Really, really great. Becky says great information. Thank you for this session. Lots of good comments here. Awesome meeting. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all the great information. We really enjoyed having you on here, and thank you for everything you both are so generous to give to us when we hang out. It's awesome, and it's mind blowing. So we appreciate it.
You know what? It's always like when you talk about power, it's just, you know, when people's energies are similar, like you just can kind of do anything. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, my pleasure to contribute and to be contributing alongside wonderful energies like yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on.
Good night, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.